then I own a second. I was going to remind you about that anyway, Ken.
Sorry.
And then I own a second business called Turn Two Designs, which actually released this past December, which creates apparel for Coast Guard members and current stations, as well as family members who serve. So, kind of tying that into everyday supply chain again. And I obviously am the president of the ASEM New Haven chapter, as well as I sit on the international board for ASEM as their chair for young professionals. And everywhere I've gone, every seat I held at a table, team building is always very important. So I'm very excited to talk to you about this today. And that being said, I want to start off and kick things off strong with something simple. In the Zoom chat, drop one word that describes how you're feeling today about your current team or workload. Don't overthink it, just the first word that comes to mind. And I'll say some of them out loud.
You're taking a look too, I assume.
Yeah. So overload is one of them. That's a great one. Come on, guys. There's last time I checked, there's like 40 of you in here. So it could be stressed, it could be um things like motivated, frustrated, I'm seeing challenging, disjointed, overwhelmed. You guys are not alone. These are words that, you know, 9 times out of 10, sadly, when you don't have the right team infrastructure and support from top down or bottom up, can happen. And that's why it's really good. And that reflects, the overwhelmed, the, depressed, excited, overworked. Those terms are really what it can sometimes mean to also work in supply chain today. Let's be honest. There's always pivots going on. You have to expect the unexpected. And for think of each of us as a link in a chain. And today we're going to talk about how to strengthen those links in those chains to build a more resilient team. So that being said, I'm going to go into the next topic. Why team building in supply chain? Why are we talking about this today? Let's be honest, supply chain isn't a solo sport. For procurement to logistics to planning, customer service, we rely on each other and we rely on communication. Where do most of the breakdowns happen? Not within our own departments, but during the handoffs between them. That's why team building is crucial. It's not just a feel-good exercise, it's a performance strategy. And that is too why I also provided this image that you see on the PowerPoint today of that one person holding the broken chain. So I was originally going to do a poll. Instead of a poll, I would like to see on a scale of 1 to, yeah, I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. And the 5 words, if you want to drop them in and number them, is going to be communication as number 1, role clarity as number 2, trust as number 3, response time as number 4, and visibility. And as Ken puts those in, I want you to put in a number of where do you see the biggest collaboration challenges in your workflow within your team now. So just put in a number.
What
Okay,
was
we're already
what was for Olivia?
4 was response time. So 1
And
is
what
communication, 2 is role clarity, 3 is trust, 4 is response time, and 5 is visibility. So I'm getting a lot of 1s, a lot of 4s. So I'm seeing the biggest things that we're having issues with overall today in this meeting and challenges is between communication and then response times. And then we're getting some role clarity in there. Larry, I like how you put in multiple because that is very true. It isn't always just a one thing. Um, okay, and we'll let roll in. I'm seeing some more 1s and 4s. Love it. Not that that's always a good thing, but at least we all know that it can be a mix of things. And these are the exact areas we'll be diving into today, which is great. So where you guys are feeling some bottlenecks, we will be diving deeper. So I want to go into the 4 traits that every high performing supply chain shares: trust, communication, accountability, and purpose. Trust is the foundation. If I don't trust the demand planner's forecast, I build a buffer. That buffer becomes inventory. Inventory becomes cost, and it's a domino effect. Communication, if poor communication creates confusion, especially in hybrid or remote teams. So clear updates and consistent languages make a world of a difference. A pure example of this in even the non-supply chain realm of things right now is I was recently on a call talking about podcasting, and the term podcast was being used a lot. And I like pulled up on the back end in Google Code, this person's podcast. And they didn't have a podcast. And I said to them, "Where's your podcast live?" And they said to me, "On Facebook." And I said, "So it's not a podcast. It's a community video webinar you might be putting on that has interviews." She goes, "Well, I use the term podcast, but that's not what podcast means." Right? Podcasting is when you know the predominant of your audience is listening via audio platforms, Spotify, iTunes, places like that. And right in there, in that communication, we were talking about 2 completely different things. And then once she realized that, we were able to have the right conversation. So poor communications and differential of consistent languages, no matter whether it's supply chain or podcasting or whatever it might be, can break things down very quickly. And thirdly, accountability. Accountability isn't about blame, it's about ownership. And I think that's a really important differential. When teams know who owns what, things move faster and move smoother. And lastly, purpose. Purpose connects our work to a bigger picture. When people feel like what they do matters, they collaborate better. And who wouldn't like to know their work matters and be able to collaborate better? So I'm going to do another poll, but I want you guys to just type this in because I don't have time to set up the polls. Which of these 4, trust, communication, accountability, or purpose, which of these 4 does your team excel at the most? And we'll see what we get. So you could either like trust is 1, 2, 3, 4. So you could type them in. I'm seeing we're getting trust, which is really good. We're getting accountability, trust again, purpose. That's really good. So I'm seeing a flow of different things come in. I'm liking it. And each of these, there isn't one that matters more over the other, which I think is really important to also differentiate. There's no wrong answer here. We all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. So I like that it is also spread out right now. And we're getting some more purpose and accountability. So now I want to do something fun that I'm going to need Ken's help with since he is the host. And we are going to do a breakout activity called Supply Chain Scenario Scramble. So this is a time where we're going to quickly implement team building in real time. We are going to give you, I'm going to give you, I should say, a real world challenge. We're going to break out into small groups in breakout rooms.
I'm gonna make you the
And
host.
yeah, that's fine.
You do the
You're
breakout
going
rooms.
you're going to be on a mission. Respond to a supply chain challenge together and focus on how teamwork solves issues. So here's your scenario, and I will also put it in the chat. So while I'm saying it, you guys have time to copy and paste it. So you have it when I switch you. But the scenario is you're part of a supply chain team that just found out a key supplier can't fulfill their order due to a sudden raw material shortage. That shortage affects a high demand product line scheduled for shipment this week. Your job is to come up with a plan to communicate this internally and externally, align on a new delivery strategy, and maintain customer trust. So I'm going to give you 7 to 10 minutes. You're going to assign a spokesperson, and when we come back into the room, each team will have 1 minute to share and talk about what their solution was. And during this time, think about which of the 4 traits your solution strengthens. So I'll go back to those 4 traits on my screen as well. So the trust, will it be strengthening trust? Will it be strengthening communication, accountability, or purpose? And so I'm going to create a few groups quickly and then let you guys go. So let me do that. I'm going to create 3, we'll do 4. How many people are on this call right now? So we'll do 5 breakout rooms. So it's going to be, you'll be paired in groups of 6 or 7 per room. And then I'll give you guys about 10 minutes and then we'll come back together and share your insights. Okay. Are people going? I can't see. Are people on their breakout rooms? Okay, let's see. Okay, 10 minutes. Jessica? Sign 2. 4, 2, and 5. Give him a minute. Okay, we're getting everyone back. I'll wait till I see the numbers and then we'll begin. So now what I want to do is, like I said earlier, I'm going to give space for each of the 5 rooms to take the floor and share their 1 to 2 minute solution. So I'm going to start with room 1, whoever that individual who's going to speak. You have the floor to tell us what your solution and insight is.
All right, this is Larry Spinall. I was on team 1, and the people in our group were very learned and had a lot of good comments there. Their comments, the problems they're having themselves. Communication, basically, they say is very important. You must remain with trust with the communication and prioritize with accountability. Communication without proper can result in failure and where the whole delivery is compromised. And if there's anybody else on our team who wants to chime in, go right ahead.
I think you covered it. Thank you, Larry.
Okay, so I'm going to go into room 2. Now, remember, guys, you are supposed to be coming up with a scenario to the solution. So I really want to hear your solution to this scenario as well. So who from room 2 wants to speak?
And I'll apologize. I don't know which number I was in, truthfully.
I think it was 3, Steve.
Or 3? Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
so Arvin, Carl, Elizabeth, John, Kim Armstrong, Mal, I'm gonna butcher this, so I apologize. Ma Roth, Chris, and Rose were in room 2. So
I can get started, and then Chris could kind of pick up from there if that's okay. Uh, for our solution, we really thought that the biggest thing is going to be leadership and culture. Understanding what the culture is of this organization to start with, but then you need a good leader. You need a leader who has the ability to communicate what this plan is, and we didn't necessarily come up with a plan per se, but we came up with a concept as to how this should be carried out. And the one factor that's extremely important is communicating this internally and externally, and to maintain customer trust is honesty. And it has to be done as a team. And Chris, you had mentioned something too about we both mentioned mentioning about individuals who, somebody else mentioned individuals who are afraid to speak up, and that this should be represented as a team. But Chris, you kind of expounded on that.
Absolutely. I think one of the things is when you're talking about culture, is that if there's a culture of punitive, like punishment, and when things come up, leadership doesn't want to hear it. They punish the team members for it. So there's not a there people are unwilling to share the extent of the problem, and they're unwilling to tell the truth. They hide. There's no transparency, and also they minimize things. And so when you're communicating across functions and roles, it's going to be really hard if that's the case. So a great idea is also to, as a team, present what is happening, what's the problem, and solutions. So there's no scapegoating of one person, and there's no punishment of just one person, but more of a learning process and a method to improve things with that scenario, that situation.
And managing silos that exist that led to this is something that needs to be included with the honesty.
Absolutely.
And I love that because it also highlights that there are silos, but also highlights the importance of the communication while also saying it isn't just about finding someone to blame.
And I will
It's
tell you
about,
that I spoke with somebody yesterday who's an expert in supply chains. And one of the things that he said to me is that supply chains are loaded with silos.
yep. It's one, I think it's one of the biggest kryptonites we
Good
have in
word for
supply
it.
chain. So yeah, let's now move on to room 3, which, if someone from room 3 would like to share what their solution is.
We'd be glad to invite Larry, Angelo, Joe, and Monica to add to what I'm saying, but we keyed in on the fact that we needed a plan, and we needed a plan that was going to mainly be both an internal communication and then an external communication. So slight differences and in how and what is communicated internally versus externally. And we keyed in on, we need to A, align on the new delivery strategy, and B, maintain customer trust. So trying to just stay focused on the big picture, which then got everybody talking a bit. And right away, for the internal, the idea was to start out and make sure a key communication gets out the door quickly, impacting the assessment and letting people know how the shortage is affecting things, make sure leadership is aware of what's going on, and then move into contingency planning, other sources, other suppliers that we could talk to, talking to the current supplier, those kinds of things to begin to get a handle on ways to solve the problem. But the key was immediate communication, getting out information that we have a problem and the actions that we're starting. For external, there's external customers, external stakeholders being customers as well as suppliers. So contact and communication happening with both, but when it came to the customer, we were talking about how can we specifically maintain that trust. And the key word that came up was, or a key word was, be transparent with them and try to be, straightforward about the issue and what we were doing about it and get that out the door. And we had one of the team members make use of some technology to help us start kind of getting all the thoughts in place and sort of bullet point list of things to do. And so I'll stop there. Others want to share.
So, Olivia, do we get a little bit of a star for using Chat GPT?
Listen, you gotta leverage your tools, so I like it. And that'll definitely AI's conversation around September's event. So yes, you can get a star in my book.
So this is what we did. We first we all came up with our ideas, and then I just put it in. I took your what was typed in. I just said give us 5 bullet points, and then we said, oh, number 5 looks a little light. Add to it. So we just said, how do I do number 5? And it came up with pretty much everything that we had discussed before we relied on it. So I was pretty impressed that it put a lot of good ideas in. We had more probably details, but if we rebuilt the prompt, it would probably give us even more. But we were just trying to be quick about it.
I love it. And I think, and we've talked about this in the past, I am an advocate for leveraging all the tools and resources you have at your fingertips. I actually just launched in my podcast consulting a custom Chat GPT AI. So I even use it in my business. I think that when we look at tools and things like leveraging Chat GPT, for example, it is a tool and we still need humans, because if I see this a lot of times, if you don't prompt it correctly, you can get a very different outcome, as most of you probably know. But I love the aspect the team brought up about transparency, and it brought to mind even a pure example of communication on both ends that I just had in the turn 2 design aspect of my business and the supply chain I'm currently doing. We just wrapped up a custom shirt order for the US Coast Guard in one of their areas, actually here in Juneau. And the shirts got made, someone got an order, they got a sweatshirt. Everyone was loving their gear, coming out very timely, not an issue at all. But I did get an email from a customer who said, hey, the pocket on my sweatshirt was sewn weirdly. On the right side, I can't fit my hand in fully. Is there anything you can do about this? Could I get a new sweatshirt made? Because it's just an inconvenience. And she sent me photos. I emailed her back. I said, yeah, if you could just send me photos so I can explain this to my manufacturing team, I will definitely make it right by you. And she sent me photos, and I quickly went and talked to the manufacturers, and I was like, hey, this really just looks like it wasn't gone through a double check. What can we do to make the customer happy? Because obviously it has nothing to do with the print or something she did. It was just that a check in the process on their end obviously was not done correctly. And they were like, this is all we need. Make sure they provide pictures. So I reached out to her. I said, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you get a new sweatshirt. But this is something my manufacturers are asking for. I don't doubt you. I just need this for my manufacturers. Can you please send me a picture? She sent me a picture. She actually went above and beyond and sent me 4 and was like, I really appreciate the transparency in why you need these. Yeah, and I emailed the manufacturers back. They were like, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate getting different images. We will get working on printing a new one and getting it out, and we'll let you know when the new tracking number is made. And I put that onto the customer as well as like, hey, this is where it stands. This is be the process. And each side, including myself, was very happy because not only was it smooth, but everyone felt heard and validated in the process. And there was no mystery on like from the customer of like, okay, well, why are you asking me for pictures? Why do I have to do this extra step? You don't just trust me. And there was complete transparency from the actual manufacturing side of saying, this is why we need it. We're not trying to be an asshole, but this is why we need it to cross our, make sure no one's trying to fraudulent, like get product for free. So transparency can be very important. It can also be something that when it comes to a business, no matter the size, small, medium, or large company, however long you've been in business, the thing that can make or break your marketing, that trust, that authority with a customer, whether that's a B2B or B2C business. So I love that. So lastly, well, I don't know, did we do room 4? I don't think we did. So not lastly,
Yeah,
room
not
4.
yet. Not yet. Mhm.
So room 4, why don't you tell us about your solution?
Well, our discussion went as far as scoping the size of the challenge. There's one strong constraint in your problem statement that the next shipment is due in 1 week. So our common thoughts together is that we first got to find out what is that item that is in shortage from the sub-tier supplier, and how the criticality of that, meaning for performance and for reliability, would help us to correctly scope the solution. Is one category if it's a life safety issue that could take months and months to requalify a new supplier or get out, with a solution, or if it is a matter of just printing a label and the label stock is the item that is in short. And in addition to that, after scoping out component criticality is to look at how it may affect our, let's say, customer contract. If we are late in shipping, is there a penalty clause? Any changeover coverage in the supplier contract we got to address. So in terms of functional areas, the team identified finance, customer and service support, and let's say with the and also the supplier, quality engineer, and internally, we identify manufacturing, order fulfillment functions, and engineering to be the minimum mix of the team member to start to address a recovery and a path out.
I love how you also identified who needs to have a seat at the table and who needs to be on the team to be able to have the right voices be heard and also to provide the correct information needed to potentially fix this issue.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then lastly, we have room 5. So room 5, why don't you tell us what your solution was?
Being the sacrificial goat for room 5.
I was gonna say, come on.
One of the paramount things that we need to do is to formulate a solid communications plan, both internally and externally, to inform what has happened, what the problem is, and then the next part of that solution is looking at what do we already have in our supply pipeline, our supply pipeline of those materials, those critical materials that we need to have for this particular product. Additionally, we would look at what we already have in inventory in our distribution systems for those critical items, and potentially set up an allocation with the customer. Third, we would also look at establishing a second source or an alternate source. With the alternate source, we would also have to be cognizant of the fact that we would need to have the customer understand that we're going to an alternate source that may require their approval for going to that alternate source. Many places, not a problem. Other ones where you're dealing with a government contract or a critical contract, you definitely need to have an approved alternate part approved by the customer. So that was kind of our approach. And Anil, Perez, Jessica, you want to step up? Have anything to say on that?
Yeah, that's we said communication is the key. If we have better communication with the supplier and the customer, so that builds up, you are building your trust even better. And in that case, it helps a lot. And you have commercial teams and then supply chain team, they work together. Communication is the key. And
Love it. Love it. And great insights, all 5 teams. And you all just demonstrated the value of creative, fast-paced collaboration, which is essential in supply chain and firefighting, right? When that last minute thing comes up, you have to pivot, and also being able to work as a group who might have different experiences and might have different teams themselves, like group 4 brought up of who, I forget if it was 3 or 4, of like who needs to be at the table. So now we are going to do a mini mindset shift from functional to flow. And fun fact, as it gets mentioned all the time in all the meetings we have. I'm currently located in Juneau, Alaska. In front of my office, I have a nice big window that I get to see outside right now, even while we're doing this. But I thought it would be fun to actually put an image of an overview of Juneau, Alaska. So this image that you see here is actually a aerial view of part of Juneau, Alaska, and what it really looks like that someone took.
I thought that was the
So,
view from your office.
so if you see that bridge, right over here, this is like downtown Juneau. It's the top, so you're seeing more of like if someone was standing at the top of the mountain. But down here, there's a bridge right at the end of downtown Juneau that goes to where I live. I live like right over there, so 5 minutes to downtown Juneau. So I get all the pretty views right from my window and house of the waterways and the mountains and everything like that. So I'm gonna go back. I thought I had the thing up first. Okay, so now the mini mindset shift from functional to flow. Now I want to challenge all of your mindsets. We often think in terms of functions. I'm in procurement, I'm in operations, but supply chain thrives on flow, not just function. So and that's also why I put this image that also has waterways in it, because water is always flowing. Imagine your supply chain and logistics, and you can kind of see over here an actual boat that is carrying potentially freight on it. Imagine your supply chain as a river. Where does it slow down or get blocked? What can you personally do to keep things flowing? When we shift to a flow mindset, we stop working in silos, which we've discussed throughout today, and start working in sync. So now what I want to do is provide tools for a better team collaboration. And there's 3 easy things you can do. 1 is coffee in cases, 2, hot handoff checklist, and 3, 1 slide wins. And I'm going to go into each of those. So the first one that I mentioned is coffee in cases. Set up a 20-minute chat with someone from another department. Learn about one of their challenges that they're having. The second option is hot handoff checklist. Create a simple checklist for task handoff. What the next person needs in order to succeed. And thirdly, the 1 slide wins. So have teams submit 1 slide each month celebrating a small or a big win. It can be either, it could be both. It builds visibility and morale. These ideas are low lift, but high impact. You can start small and you'll see big shifts in engagement, communication, trust, accountability, and purpose. All the things we've talked about today. And then lastly, I'm going to bring up, you are the strongest link, build like one team. So what did we learn today? That supply chain excellence isn't just about software, data, or even processes. It's about people. Teams who trust, communicate, own their roles, and connect to purpose outperform those that do not. Your challenge I'm giving everyone this month is set up 1 cross-functional sync. Shadow someone in a different role, or run a mini team building activity. You are the strongest link. Build like one team. So before we go, what's one thing you'll do differently with your teams this week? And put that in the chat and I will mention them. See
Can
what
you,
we got.
when you're done, just make me the host so I can
Yeah,
wrap
I'm
it up.
almost
I
done.
don't know if it's still recording. When you go to breakout
It
rooms, does
is.
it stop it? Okay, good.
Mhm.
Awesome.
It should still be recording. I have a little recording button in my corner, so.
I have one that looks like it's just a circle, but it doesn't look like it's lit up, so I don't know. But we'll find out, won't we?
Yeah, we will.
Once you make me the
So,
host, I can check it.
yeah, participants, give me 1 second, but I'm gonna finish up and then I'll make you, because I can't do both at the same time.
I think it did it.
So, okay, so I have here the idea of one slide wins. Love that. I'm glad you have that takeaway, Steve. Zed set up more coffee meets. Frank mentioned the process flow mapping with upstream and downstream stakeholders and handoffs each group. Angelo said a coffee meetup. I love how you guys are already thinking and really diving into what this challenge is supposed to be. And Rose said she wants to try the handoffs. All of these again are low lift. They don't take an extreme amount of time or money or things like that, but long term, you implement the process. We all supply chain people love process and procedures. You implement the process, it will become a normal thing, and it's very easy to do. Jessica also said she wants to try the coffee. Well, thank you all for your time and energy today, and let's keep the momentum going. And I'm going to stop sharing and let Ken do the wrap up.
Excellent job as always, Olivia. So we're gonna stay on for networking and asking questions and stuff like that. Also, Olivia will be sending you a gift card from the Massachusetts Minuteman chapter. It's coming from Sandeep, so it's not spam when you see, oh, it's Sandeep. What's this? Well, it's real. It'll be a Amazon gift card. So we're going to send you that for sure. We appreciate all the effort and time you took to prepare this. If you want to send me that PowerPoint, I'll put it up with the recording. So that would be great. I'll make it as a PDF, of course, if it isn't already. So that'd be great. I put in links, so get them now, because once we shut off the meeting, you won't have the links, right? So there's links in there now for the CEU certificate, for the survey, for the past recordings. That's way up at the top. For New England Supply Chain Conference, there's a link for that. There's a link for classes. There's a link for Olivia's podcasts. Get that while you can, for at least YouTube. I find that's the easiest for a work computer anyway. And you'll have certificates, you'll have survey link, you'll have everything. Let us know what you think, and we appreciate it. So I'm gonna say, is there any Q&A right now? Questions and answers for Olivia right now. While you have her, let's talk about team building, maybe some issues you have in your company. Are there silos? Are there, is there a lack of trust? Does someone try to undercut you? How can we improve team building? Olivia is our expert, so let's ask her now while you have a chance. Free advice, hit her.
Hey, Olivia, Larry here.
Yes.
I think one of the things that it's like a common sense thing, that all your suppliers, you should have them all rated on how long you've had them, how good they do, the performance, the past times of delivery, what they've been able to build on time. So I would almost believe that everybody would know who the weakest, know your weakest link, or know your weakest suppliers, and then have those where you team up to try to keep those people well in communication. One of the thoughts about, I think this is just common sense thing. New suppliers, or suppliers that haven't performed that great in the past. Obviously, the ones who are right on the money all the time, you may not have to spend too much time. That's my thoughts. It's a prioritization meeting.
It can be, and yes, you should have your card of ranking always with your suppliers. That's a best practice. But it also comes down to, it isn't just on the suppliers when it comes to collaborating and team building, right? In a company where your supplier is one piece of the puzzle, you really have to not only keep an eye on that piece, but then keep an eye on all the other pieces and your team, even if everyone is only a team of one in their department. there is typically more than one person doing everything, right? Unless you're a solo entrepreneur. So it's really making sure that, for example, if I'm working at Lockheed Martin as a master scheduler, I'm talking to procurement. I am communicating to them what I need, their timeline to getting a part that might have been hurt in the making of the helicopter, for example, and that has happened, where something was damaged in transport from one facility to another, or while putting something on the plane. And now, do we pull apart from another helicopter? Are we ordering another part and delaying the schedule and having to change that, and what that process looks like and what we need in order to do it? So sometimes the trust and communication and transparency is even within a overarching department where there might be 5 different divisions within that can make or break your process and timeline and schedule so easily.
Olivia, I loved your picture of Juneau and your analogy to the river and the flow of water, which to me brings the point of flow charting. Because if you can't flow chart your process from beginning to end, you don't know your process. And and that's first of all looking at supply chain as a process, but supply chain is also a concept, and you could also flow chart that. So I just wanted to highlight that picture. It's the river, absolutely gorgeous.
Well, thank you. And it is completely true. If you can't break things down to like a step-by-step level and be able to explain it, the question lies is how well do you really understand the process? And it goes into too, one thing I was talking about earlier, obviously not in this call, in a different call, is can someone else explain from a different department or someone else on your team that might not do what you do, be able to step and explain why you do it or what you do? And that really also highlights the understanding within a team of like, why are we doing this? What's the end goal? And if everyone's able to actually communicate that, even if it's a slightly different terms, then you know you're all on the same page. If people can't, then you need to dive deeper.
And that's the 2 aspects of managing silos that are really important. You don't necessarily need to know exactly what they do. Cross-functionality and knowledge sharing. And if you have an idea what the other person is doing who's part of your team, then that's good. So that's one way of breaking down or managing silos.
You have a comment also, Olivia, how to convince senior management to invest in more than building activities. It is usually the first thing to be cut in this economy, true facts.
Team building is, very sadly, I also want to say, because there is such a big price to pay when you have to onboard or fire people that most businesses don't take into consideration, whether it's a small business, medium or large, or Fortune 500 company, that, it could be, we could find someone else, but what is the money cost? And what would be the money saved by just doing the team building? And that's why I like to look at team building in different buckets, right? And what the buy-in really is. It's really easy to do team building exercises where it doesn't take a tremendous amount of time, where you need the whole team to be there, because realistically someone might call out sick, things like that, but can be implemented into someone's regular workday. So it's really easy for me, and I've done this at Lockheed Martin, to say to my boss, hey, I really want to be able to understand what our team needs more that we're not getting from procurement, for example. Can I go shadow them for 30 minutes or sit in on this meeting? So then that way I could also advocate for us, but understand their process a little better. 30-minute meeting to potentially fix workload issues down the line and save us time and my team time? Yeah, sure. But while you're sitting in that meeting, you're able to communicate, build trust, understand their purpose in it. And it didn't come out of this bucket of team building money, right? A lot of times HR or departments will have a monetary dollar amount set aside for development or the team building exercises, and they might not have the budget long term to do these things. But when you're able to create team building exercises or spaces in room to communicate, like the coffee chats, like a checklist, all those things, they don't cost money. They cost time, which yes equals money overall. But when you break it down into the money buckets that HR team lead can actually spend, that goes into a completely different bucket, and they're way more likely to have the buy-in and allow you to do that. So hope that answers your question.
Also, Chris Heng has his LinkedIn in the chat. He says, please connect with him there, Olivia. So there you go.
Yes, I will add them.
So for the
Okay.
shy people, I'll shut the recording off and then they can ask questions. Hang on, let me hit stop
Okay.
recording. That was great presentation.